If you have two shoes, now it's time to sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, now it's time to sell one and buy a sword. Because it is now a time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on streets. This revolution is not about burning cars. This revolution is in the mind. Because if your mind is not under your control, your body will be just a tool that your oppressor will use to enslave your people and to enslave you. Steve Bantobiko said that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Until we get the control, until we become in charge of our mind, of our thoughts, we'll be able to control our actions and we'll be able to dictate what Africa must become. And that is the beginning of African freedom and African liberation and emancipation. Peace and power to all of you from wherever you join us today. From the African Continental Unity Party, we wish you a greatest weekend and we say peace and power to you. It is again one of those times that we come weekly to discuss matters related to the health and the status of Africa, and most particularly to the journey of the African liberation and emancipation as endorsed by the African Continental Unity Party. My name is Kabbalah and I'm happy to discuss this with you today. Briefly, I want to just discuss the aspect of revolution, because every time when we come on here and talk about revolution, people have different perceptions. Maybe because of the mainstream, the way it has defined, the way it has manufactured the concept of revolution, many people tend to be afraid and to mystify the word revolution. And we always try as much as we can to explain that this revolution is no longer on the streets, but is in the mind. To explain that when we talk about revolution, we don't see necessarily a lot of things that we can qualify as riots or as mobocracy. When we talk about revolution, we see a scientific means or scientific method through which African people can rebuild Africa and can liberate themselves and eventually trigger the process of African emancipation. So, literally, the revolution, if you may wonder, what does it mean? Of course, it may mean different things for different people, but in our case, when we talk about revolution, we talk primarily about the change of values. When we say revolution, we look at the transformation or the change of the value system that governs our lives today. Every society is governed by a certain values or a certain principles that dictates who get what, who does what, and who benefit from what. You know, literally, when we talk about a society, any particular society, right, there must be a question, a most important question that is applicable to every society. And the way that people answer to that question dictates what kind of society people will live in. And that question is, who must be in control of the resources of the country, and who must control the means of production and distribution of that particular society? That is an important question. Every time we think about society, we must begin by thinking about this question. Who controls the means of, who controls the resources of that nation? It means of production and distribution of that wealth. Who controls that? And there are only two ways to answer to this question. One is the majority must control the resources, the means of production and distribution. The other way to answer to that question is the minority, a tiny number of people must control the resources, the means of production and distribution of wealth of that society. And the way we answer this question determines now what kind of society are we going to have. Now, in relation to us in our society today as African people, when we find ourselves in a society that is being designed in such a way that Africa is rich It's got a lot of resources, but those resources do not benefit to African people, do not really improve the conditions of African people. But in other words, those resources are under the control of foreign enterprises or foreign corporates. Then the value systems over which our society, as African society, is based is completely wrong. Because the value system that we have does not work for the benefits of African people or of the majority. And therefore, we need to change it. We need to change the value system. And when we begin to work for the change of this value system, we are talking about revolution. When we begin to talk about the change of the value system that governs our society today, obviously we talk about revolution. That's what we mean by revolution. It's actually a radical transformation of the nature of the society or of the structure of the society. If the society happens to be as it is today, that Africa produces what she does not consume and consumes what she does not produce, it means that there is a need for a major revolution to change the status quo and eventually to create a new value system that can now benefit the masses. That is why we talk about revolution. And for us to even talk about the value system that we need to create is not something that has to start by protesting on streets. It's not something that has to start by burning cars. No, we don't create a value system by burning cars, by protesting. We create value system by sitting down and think about the situation, about the current value system, by understanding how it affects us and also evaluate and assess and study in order to figure out how we can change this, what kind of alternative we can bring in order to have a better society that benefits all of us as citizens or as people of African descent. That's why we talk about revolution. So revolution primarily starts in the mind, because a human being is designed or created to function from a formula that I personally like to call mind to action formula or head to hands formula. In other words, mind to action formula or head to hands formula. It means before you engage your hands or your body to work on anything, to work on any projects, to go down the street and protest or to do whatever activity, you firstly need to engage your mind in creating that activity so that your hands can now go and accomplish it. In other words, we as African people, we have always been quicker to engage our bodies in working in the concepts that have been created not by ourselves but our enemies. So if we are talking today about revolution, this shouldn't be a revolution or revolutionary agenda that has been designed by somebody else who is not even affected by the situation that we are going through as African people. This should be a revolution that implies that we have sat down, we have thought, we have processed, we have evaluated the current situation, how it is disastrous to us as African people, and therefore we have come up with a new approach, which is a new value system over which our new society can be built, and most importantly, a new value system over which the future of our children can be based. This is why we talk about revolution. So it's actually change of principles, change of guidelines, change of value systems. Today, in the world today, we have capitalist values that dictates the world's future. I mean, the capitalist value system dictates the world in terms of which direction the world must go. So everything around the world is based on profits, is evolving around the subjects of profit maximization and growth. There's nothing as humane as it should be or as it was in the past before the era of capitalism. So that is the value system of today. So they can destroy the environment as long as that allows them to have profit maximization. That is good. That is the value systems over which the current system or the current society is built. They can kill as many people as they can as long as that is really profitable to them, that is fine. Look what is happening in Russia and Ukraine today. When you think about it, is all about capitalism, about profit maximization, right? Russia is not supposed to sell its oil to European countries. It's US who is supposed to do that. All is about maximization of profits, right? That is what the world is based. That is what the world is based on today. So in reality, you come to understand that everything is commoditized. Even the relationship now becomes commoditized. Everything that you need to do, you need to pay for you to have them, right? And this is insane society that we are living in. I wouldn't want to say the society that we have built, because I didn't build this society. I'm actually working on the means of destroying this kind of society so that we can now build a new society based on values of Ubuntu. You know, a society that is based on humane value systems. You know, a society in which you are not supposed to sleep outside because you don't have money. You know, while there are people who sleep in 78 rooms, they don't even occupy all those rooms by themselves. They have 78 mansions. You know, a society whereby you don't supposed to sleep hungry, while there are people who, you know, who grow crops, you know, hectares of crops in order to feed animals, right? While there are other people in the same society who are sleeping hungry with empty stomach. We are not supposed to live in this kind of society. So all of this is to describe what kind of society we're living in today and what is the value system that govern today's society and the need for revolution. And when we talk about revolution, we see the change of the value system that govern our society. We need a society that is humane, a society that not everything should be commoditized. Not everything should be there for profits. Not knowledge should be there for profits. Knowledge should be there to empower everyone so that we have a society of people who are competent, people who are knowledgeable. No society like in America, because in most cases when we talk about development, we see America. But what is America? Is a society where for you to study, you must be indebted heavily by the banks for you to have education. There are people who pay for credit, for student loans even after 20 years of their education. That's not a society that we want. Therefore, we need a revolution. That's why we talk about revolution. Africa cannot grow in the conditions or over the value system that is governing the world today. For Africa to grow, we must restructure our society. And the better way to do that, we need a Pan-African revolution. We need a Pan-African revolution in order to restructure Africa overall on the value system of African people that we can summarize as Ubuntu value systems. That's simply emphasize that you are because I am. Because if you are not there, I cannot survive, right? I survive because you are there, and you survive because I'm here. And that is what we call a human society. You know, in reality, when you think about it, human beings are different from animals. An animal, you can put a monkey from one forest where it was born, or from any place, you know, unfamiliar to the monkey, a baby monkey. The baby monkey will grow up acting just like a monkey. I'm trying to rephrase Kwame Ture. You can take a baby monkey, you know, from the forest and put it in a society. It's going to grow like a baby monkey. It's going to grow like a monkey, acting like a monkey, doing everything that the monkey does, you know, screaming like a monkey, just like, you know, just like what we know about monkey. But when you take a human being out of human society, you take him into the forest, into the jungle, a human being will misbehave. He's not going to act, he's not going to grow normally as a human being. He's going to misbehave. For example, if you take a human baby, you put him in a jungle, he can end up, you know, killing himself, and he can end up cutting himself. So a human being is designed to live in the society surrounded by other human beings, because there we share the responsibility to monitor one another, to look after one another, and to support one another. That is the nature of things. That is how we have been designed to be. A dog, you put a dog in a people, you take it, or you put a dog in a forest, it's gonna be a dog, barking, eating bones, eating whatever the dog eats. But you take a human being, you put him in a jungle, it's gonna end up eating what monkeys eat, end up eating what dogs eat. It will end up not having a speech, not having, the capability to speak, not be able to speak a language, because it's not being fastened by a society. So this is a difference. So based on this, Pan-Africanism is really an ideal that we have to embrace, all of us as African people, in order to grow, because Pan-Africanism is an ideology that brings us together. Pan-Africanism is an ideology that brings us to, that emphasizes that elements of human society. Because what is happening today is, I'm still talking about the value systems over which the society is built today. It's mostly talking about private property and individual rights. In other words, when you talk about Western society, there is more emphasis on individual rights. So it means individual rights are more important than collective rights. You can kill the whole town to save a private property, the private property of one individual. That is Western society. It means one individual is more important than collective, society. But when we talk about Ubuntu, we see the rights of the group more important than the rights of individual. That's actually the basis of African culture. The right of the group is more important than the right of individuals. So there is a ownership, a group or a collective ownership of the society, collective ownership of the resources, the collective ownership of the wealth of the nation. When we come to Ubuntu philosophy, Ubuntu understanding of the society, which is opposite to that. So, but we have been through colonialism, through slavery, and today neo-colonialism, we have come to embrace this value system centered on individual rights and neglecting the collective rights. And when we look at today, we are unable to come together. We are xenophobic or Afrophobic because we look after our individual interest first rather than collective interest. While in reality, a man becomes stronger and better as equal as his society or his group is. You cannot become stronger and better if the group in which you are born, the group in which you are living, is weak and deficient. That is actually the contradiction of the current system. So revolution is needed. We need to address the issue of inequality, economic inequality, through revolutionary means, because economic inequality is actually inherent with the capitalist system. We cannot address that within the paradigm of capitalist system. We need a different system. Therefore, we need a revolutionary change. That is why we talk about value system. We cannot address the issue of politics if we don't look at it differently by coming up with a new system, a new value system that gives power to people than what it is, what is working today, which gives more power to tiny group of people to make decisions over the life of the entire nation. That is not democracy. Whether we look at it at work, whether we look at it in our institutions, it is not democracy. Is a symbol of democracy, but without substance of democracy. So revolutionary is very important. We need to begin understanding that this revolution is not necessarily about a lot of symbolism that we see people involved in. It's actually the transformation of the mind. So if you want to become a revolutionary, you must be educated. You must educate yourself. You must actually read more than you expose yourself to social media, because by reading, by gaining more knowledge, you then gonna be able to change your mind, to change the value system that is governing your mind. Because the reality of every society, if you think about it philosophically speaking, the reality of every society reflects what is in the mind of the people in that society. And based on this, if we want to change the society, we are not supposed to build jails. We are not supposed to build prison to coerce people to act in different way or in a way that we expect them to do. This is what capitalist system does, because it's a system that many people don't agree with. Therefore, they must build jails to coerce people to certain behavior. But if we want to change the society, we must change how people think. If we want to change a society, we must change how people think. We don't need to change the society by building jails, by building prisons, but we change the society by changing how people think. That is why this revolution, we say, and we said it again, it is based on the mind. So if you are interested to see Africa revolutionized, Africa transformed through this scientific revolution, you must be educated African person, because through education you'll be able to question all the mindset that has been given to you by your oppressor. You'll be able to question all the mindset that has been given to you by your religion. You'll be able to question all the mindset that has been given to you by your tradition, and begin to look at the reality of African people as it is today and see that it has to be revolutionized. It has to be fundamentally changed, and that can happen only through the revolutionary means, a scientific revolutionary means, through the guidelines of Pan-Africanism. I'm talking about African people. So you see, the change that we need begins in the mind. So if your mind is not yet transformed, how will your actions be? Your actions will still gonna be the same. The problem is that in Africa, we want change, but we don't change ourselves. We want to see change that we are unable to project. We want to see change that we are unable to reflect. We want to see change, but we don't want to change. And most of times when we talk about change in Africa, we want to see buildings, we want to see bridges, we want to see roads, we want to see all these things built. Built by whom, if we don't get educated to build them ourselves? You remember, just a short while after colonialism, African people who came in charge of African countries, they inherited some infrastructures from colonial systems, such as roads, buildings, stuff like that, because these people were not built in their minds. Short while after colonialism, or after what we call independence, all these infrastructures were in decay because these people didn't know how to maintain them, and mostly they didn't know how to build new infrastructures and to develop Africa. That is the challenge of when you talk about change of symbols, change of physicalities, of materials, without really centering that change on individual people who must be in charge of the nation. So when we want to talk about Africa development, Africa future, the question must come to you as individual. What change are you going through right now? What kind of process are you going through now to change your mind, to change your life? Are you still worshiping white Jesus? Are you still seeing white people as the only people who can change your life, and seeing black as negative as it was taught to you in schools or in religions? Are you still thinking that it's only capitalism that can change Africa? Are you still thinking individually? Are you an individualistic person? These are the questions that can be changed when you read, when you educate yourself. You see, we are now in a time that is called information age. It means that information is everywhere out there. And if you remain ignorant, it is because of your fault. Because you don't want to educate yourself, because you don't want to study. The knowledge is everywhere. Now, in case you want to learn more, in case you want to improve yourself, in case you want to gain some knowledge of African history, African world, African reality, and Pan-Africanism, and change the value system that governs your mindset so that you can look at the reality differently, we invite you to join us within the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, where we produce new leaders. competent in politics and in business, because the two are backbone of every society. Political leadership and business leadership are the backbone of every society. And we have dedicated ourselves to produce new leaders because we believe that the future of Africa must be prepared. And if it has to be prepared, it must be through education. As I said, the mindset changes through education. So if you want to learn more, you want us to help you, we can do that. Please just join us and reach out to us. The numbers, all the details are on our website, on Facebook line. We can help you with that. Now, in concluding this, it is very important that I state this philosophy of Kwame Ture. He's a great revolutionary. If you have never heard about Kwame Ture, I ask you to go and find the books about Kwame Ture. One of them is Stokely Speaks. One of the book that is composed of speeches by Kwame Ture. Is a very, very, very interesting book that you can enjoy. So he says something very important. He said, he described unconscious struggle versus conscious struggle. Now, in reality, what Kwame Ture said is that we all have come to know that we are negatively being impacted by slavery, colonialism, and today neocolonialism. In brief, the Western society is working permanently and consistently to undermine the efforts of African people to develop Africa, and therefore the result is all the sufferings that we see in our society today. And then the reality is we are all struggling against these things on a daily basis. The reason why you wake up in the morning, you go to work, because you want to struggle against poverty, you want to struggle against all the conditions that can put you in a situation of backwardness. We are struggling, but we are struggling now unconsciously, according to Kwame Ture. Unconscious struggle is that kind of random struggle whereby when you see a leader, an African leader being killed, for example, you see all Africans standing up, marching, protesting, commenting on social medias, and obviously speaking out against these actions. For example, we saw that when the former president of Tanzania, Magufuli, was apparently assassinated, according to the most the most narrative about his death is like he was assassinated. And we saw in the African world how people were actually saddened by that, and people were actually protesting. That's kind of unconscious struggle. Why? Because it is not conscious. It is unconscious because it happens randomly. It is a reactionary struggle, and that is the mode in which we are today, us as African people. We know the reality. We know that it's only through Pan-Africanism that we can develop Africa. We know that the unity of African people is the key to African development. We know that we are being undermined by the Western society and today by Chinese. But how do we struggle against these things? Unconsciously. We are doing it, unconsciously in a way that it is just random. It is reactionary. When something happens, then we react. And every time you are supposed to react after your oppressor has acted, he controls your life. In other words, every time you are acting after your oppressor has acted, every time you are reacting after your oppressor has acted, he controls your life, because he's the one now who pushed the button in you to jump, to march on streets, and to protest and to cry. Therefore, he controls your life. And that is not a true revolution. In contrast to this unconscious revolution, there is a conscious revolution or conscious struggle. Conscious struggle means simply a well-structured and well-planned struggle. It means it shouldn't be something that we forget about today because things are right, because we have a good job, because we have a car, because we have a good suburb. And when we are discriminated at work, when we are unjustly treated at work or in a society, then we begin to struggle. Or that's when we begin to protest, when we begin to speak out against the evil in the society. That is unconscious struggle. We need to embark in the conscious struggle, because the world in which we live is a real world where people are consciously engaged in the projects that undermine the African development and progress. And if we have to get ourselves out of this situation, we must switch from unconscious mode to conscious mode of struggling or of revolution, whereby we have consistent and permanent plans that we have and that we are working on in order to bring a change that we want in the society. Right? That is why we are speaking every week here, and every day we are working on this agenda of African Continental Unity Party. It's not something that we need to do only something bad happened to us. It's something that we are doing on daily basis because it is something that we have planned, and we have seen already some results that we can get out of this work. So in other words, if you want to embark in the conscious struggle, you must belong to an organization that has goals, that has objectives, that has clear vision of what it has to attain. So, this being said, you need to belong to an organization as African people. One thing that is still undermining our progress today is because we are still remain a most disorganized group of people on the face of earth. Until today, as African people, we are disorganized, and our efforts are not congruent or are not related to our deepest wish or deepest desire of freedom and emancipation. Our efforts are scattered, in different directions, and therefore they are unable to change the status quo of African people, globally speaking. And this is because in majority, we don't belong to organizations that work for African liberation and emancipation. So, this is the right way to do revolution. You must do revolution within an organization. That is where you plan actions, you plan the value systems that have to change, and then you implement this as an organization, and you will have more impact than doing it individually. Our nations, the so-called countries that we, in our revolutionary thinking, we call they are colonial enclosures, are working individually. You see a country like, for example, like Burundi, it has a lot of dreams, sometimes nightmares. They believe that one day they will become superpower country like the United States. I mean, that's a dream. A country like Zambia, a country like, Gabon. All these countries have individual dreams, but they don't realize that being individual, you cannot achieve great than what you can do if we come collectively under the umbrella of Pan-Africanism. Because the forces that afflict us or that impose us to stay in a situation we are today are working collectively. And that's where we need to understand the power of collective work and power of organization. Look, all the banks, they are working together. Look, all the major corporates, they are working together in teams, in collaboration, in socialism, so to say. Why not us poor people? Why not us the masses at the grassroots? Why can't we organize ourselves? So if you are interested in being part of an organization, being part of a team that is working for the African agenda, we invite you to join the African Continental Unity Party so that together we can work and we can change things. We invite you to join Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, and we invite you to join, to invest in Ubuntu Solidarity group, where we are investing all over the continent, for the economic development of our people. I hope this has been useful to you, this brief discussion. Don't forget to please like this video and share it if you found what we have discussed here interesting. It is one of the ways you can support what we do. It is one of the ways you can obviously push us forward in what we do. There's no other support than your support. The mainstream will never gonna support this kind of ideology. They are actually trying to undermine us, but you can support us because we are doing this as ordinary people. We are not, we don't have PhD degrees and stuff like that. We are ordinary people just like you. The problem is that we have a commitment to this agenda of African liberation and emancipation, this scientific revolution that we have embarked on in order to change our future and to change the course of the history of African history, and to make sure that our kids are not going to be enslaved as we are right now. So please like the video and share it as much as you can. It's one of the ways you can support what we do. Thank you very much for your time. And once again, if you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution And this revolution is not on the streets. This revolution is not about burning cars. This revolution is firstly in the mind. Because if you are not in charge of your mind, your body will be a tool that your oppressor will use to enslave your people. Once again, thank you very much. Until then, bye-bye.